Okay, welcome to the CCF online meeting service webinar for June 2014. I'm hosting this, obviously. My name's Wayne Huntley. As you can see on this screen here, I'm the CCF Environmental Field Officer. Today I'd like to talk to you about site assessment, excavating soil material and assessment on that, an assessment on the risk of the potential for contamination with your soil. It's a topic that I've been working on and working with our members for probably a year and a half or 2 years now. There are some sophisticated ways of doing it and some basic steps that I guess some of our members can benefit in adopting themselves. Sometimes a contractor might ask that if they're digging a couple of 100 cubic metres of what appears to be clay and rock, then is it okay to reuse the material on another site as fill? Well, this depends. Sure, it looks to be clay and rock. Just because you might not be able to see any evidence of contamination, well, that doesn't mean that the fill is clean and free from contamination. Similarly, a contractor rehabilitating a quarry might specify to their suppliers of fill that they'll only accept clean fill material. But how do you have your eye on every load of fill that is dropped off in your quarry, and how can you hold them accountable, I suppose, if they're telling you that it's clean when really it might be contaminated? You're then slapped with a pollution infringement notice or a clean-up notice and a fine. Well, that's a possibility, I suppose. This is where you need to undertake a site assessment on your site or material to determine the risk of contamination and the suitability of the site or material, I suppose, for its intended purpose. You need to ensure that companies supplying fill material to your site have undertaken a risk assessment so that you can be confident that the material you're receiving is actually what they're telling you. So these are just some of the questions I guess you need to ask yourself that might prompt you to think, well, there might be a need for a soil, a site assessment, a material assessment. What I want to do is just explain, I guess, some of the objectives and benefits of using a site assessment or material assessment checklist. You're reducing the mismanagement of contaminated fill material and improving the opportunity for reuse or recycling of fit-for-purpose material. I suppose it emphasises the importance of managing contamination at the start of the pipe. That's something that's still being worked on, I suppose, throughout the industry. It's a cultural change and also a logistical one as well. But ultimately, it'd be wonderful if it was managed at the start of the pipe. This is a tool that I guess can perhaps put pressure for it to occur that way by changing the culture, or at least building that tool, that skill set amongst our contractors can start to influence a change there. Puts the onus on the site owner or occupier to determine the likeliness of the presence of prescribed industrial waste. Just touching back on my earlier point. An early identification of this prevents the spread of contamination and non-conformance throughout the transport and supply chain. So there obviously is an environmentally conscientious side of it as well. You need to know what the likeliness of contamination is, obviously, and this will determine how and by what means you can dispose of the material. Or if you can reuse the material, what future land use the site is intended to have, and if you're able to accept the material, and if it's suitable for the receiving environment. This online seminar is intended to provide you with some hints and tips to incorporate a simple checklist into your business activities, or simply to make you aware of the due diligence that you must exercise when excavating, transporting, receiving soil material that may be at risk of contamination. The good news is the process is quick and cheap to do. There's nothing to suggest this stuff is above any of us. You don't need to have a science degree to do it. It's a pretty simple first step. It's not a silver bullet, but it's an important first step to adopt. Yeah, it's stuff that you can complete in your office as well, on your site, and it can help determine whether or not you'll need to undertake soil sampling or analysis, which is a more time-consuming and expensive Next step. The difficult part is knowing where to find the resources to help you complete the assessment and how much information you should include. Obviously, the more information you can possibly and practically include and assess, the better. As I said, a checklist can be used for your own internal management systems, or it can be used throughout the transport chain, where the receiver of the material may require some sort of declaration that the material itself or the origin of the material has been risk assessed. Let me demonstrate now how you can construct your own checklist and what information you can include. Let's start by dividing the process into three simple components. The first section should contain some general information about the source of the material and the details of the site, the owner, the occupier, or material generator. You can format this sort of stuff into a table or a spreadsheet or even an online program. Just some of the other things that you can include in there. Okay, so one thing that you might like to look at is, well, has an EPA Victoria audit previously been undertaken for the site? Has it been issued for the site? I suggest that this probably makes the first whole point for the procedure. The statement of environmental audit is issued where, following an audit, an environmental auditor believes that the land isn't suitable for all possible beneficial uses, but is suitable for specific uses or developments. It may contain conditions for cleanup or management of contamination. If the land use changes for a property which has been issued an environmental audit, a new audit may be needed. Go to www.epavic.gov.au, as my cursor is indicating here, and use the search engine in the upper right-hand part of the home page of the web page to type in statements of environmental audit. It'll look a little bit like this. The tab in the center of the page here, search environmental audit reports. There'll be a couple of fields you'll need to enter there to make your search online. If you're having trouble with that, you can call the EPA or call myself, and we can have a search and find the information that you might need. Now, look, not all audit report content may be visible at any given time. So I guess contact EPA if particular search audit reports are not available where you think they might be. The statement of environmental audit will contain the necessary information required to manage the site, any waste and fill material. If there's a statement of environmental audit for your site, use this document to determine the type of contamination that has occurred on site and applicable management requirements. If a statement of environmental audit isn't available for your site, then let's move on to part 2 of the site assessment checklist. What I refer this to is the desktop or background assessment. Quite literally meaning that you can do this at your desktop, and it covers the background of the site to get an idea of previous activities. It can guide you through looking at the current use of the site, obviously previous site activities, as I said, which may have caused soil contamination. If you can obtain it, list information such as, as I said, the current and previous use of the site, current and previous use of the adjacent land as well, if you can find that out, of course. The municipality land zoning might be an important piece of information to list as well. Where applicable, ask your local council or shire, the client, the landowner, adjacent landowners even, or members of the community to find out this information. Before we get to that one, what I'll do is just quickly demonstrate, if you haven't used the Department of Planning and Community Development website to search planning schemes, you can click on this link here, or Google DPCD Planning Scheme Maps Online. I'll get to the land note in a second. So This link should open in a second. Okay, this is what the Planning Schemes Online section of the DPCD website looks like. If we scroll down, you can have a look at all municipalities within Victoria, or just choose between metropolitan and rural. Let's look at Metro. Let's look up the CCF headquarters. So we're in, that would be Stonington, clicking on that. And click on Maps. And it'll break the municipality up into sections. So you can click on the relevant section the site you're interested in is located within. That'll bring you to good area details. So what I want to have a look at is the zone, municipality land zoning. There's a high resolution map, so they take a little while to load up. Now I believe this is Glenferrie Road, Malvern Road intersection, and we would be located in here, which is a business 2 zone. You can look up a legend or a key for these particular codes for municipality land zoning. So that's what that looks like, and that's how you can access it. I will just go back to this presentation and touch on the environmental audit overlay. If the planning scheme map, and I'll get this this to come up, environmental audit overlay for that area of Stonington. If the planning scheme map reveals an environmental audit overlay around, within or adjacent to your site, then the site or part of the site may have had previously contaminating activities occur on it. In this instance, the municipality planning scheme will contain the provisions that stipulate which land uses the site is not suitable for. With the land zoning and any environmental audit overlays or particular overlays of interest that you can obtain from this website, you might like to attach copies of these to your checklist. I guess if you're passing them on through the transport chain or for your own records, for your project management or environmental management plan even. Eventually we'll see that load up. For the purposes of the demonstration, we might not sit here all day, but I think if we're looking at Glenferrie Road, around the area, there isn't an environmental audit overlay on this particular site, so we're in the clear, and there won't be any planning scheme provisions related to that overlay in this instance. Now, getting back to the previous or current even use of the site, the point of, I guess, accessing that information is to try and work out whether there's a high risk, medium risk or a low risk of contamination according to that land use. Now, the former Department of Sustainability and Environment published a document called Potentially Contaminated Land, General Practice Note in 2005. This can now be found on the Department of Planning and Community Development website, or you can Google the name of this this document. I guess in the future it will be possibly renamed and maybe reformatted, but for the meantime this is how you can access this. Or I have included this information as well in some of our CCF site assessment resources if you're interested in having a look at those. So that information will be there and it won't change in that particular example. This document lists a number of land uses that have high, medium and low potential for contamination and can assist you when trying to ascertain the risk of your site based on the background check. Right here is just the list of high or high risk land uses or previous land uses. Medium risk generally contains a couple of these and those particular activities are ancillary to the main use of the site, and low potential obviously greenfield sites and things like that, so there probably aren't too many examples that are low risk, particularly I guess in the metropolitan area. Something else that's worth looking at is the coastal acid sulfate soil risk as well. If you're working within a risk zone, I guess acid sulfate soil, when exposed to air, it oxidizes, and that can release or change the chemical composition of the soil. Water can flush and release acid out of that. It can damage infrastructure. It can change aquatic habitats, make cause fish kills, things like that. So it can be an environmental and structural catastrophe and across the process as well. So it's probably worth being mindful of the area that you're working in. How do you find that out? You can go to this website right here, Department of Environment and Primary Industries, and have a look at some coastal acid sulfate soil mapping. I will open it up and just demonstrate that for you. I've just taken a couple of screen grabs from that website. Again, high resolution mapping you can find here. So, West Coast, Central Coast, East Coast, Gippsland, areas like that, and a Victoria-wide map as well for your reference. So you can zoom in to quite a detailed resolution, and look where your site is, and include that on a site assessment checklist as well. Once you've completed a desktop or background assessment, you can undertake a visual inspection on your site or material. This will comprise part 3 of your checklist or assessment. Ask yourself the following questions about the site, the material you're receiving, or the adjacent land areas. Is there visual or physical evidence of industrial activity or infrastructure suggesting as such? Visible solid waste, any hazardous waste, sometimes hard to determine, but worth asking. Disturbed, coloured or stained soil, common in some cases, but is it unusual? Unusually distressed or bare soil patches. Can you smell hydrogen sulfide or rotten egg gas, commonly associated with oxidised acid sulfate soils, or other chemical odours? Evidence of chemical spills or fires, chemical tanks or containers, any evidence of that above or below ground. Abnormal surface water coloration can sometimes be an indication of hydrocarbon. Stockpiled or deposited soil of an unknown origin, agricultural and livestock tips, and it's also worth having a look at adjacent properties. If answers to any of your part 3 are yes, then the site or part of the site may have had a potentially contaminating activity occur. It's part of the check. If part 3 of your assessment shows a risk of contamination or confirms the presence of contamination, then the site and or soil material may require sampling and analysis. It may require sampling analysis of all or either surface water, air and soils by a suitably qualified environmental professional, just depending on what the outcome is and what you find. If the assessment shows a risk of contamination, then you, as the client or principal contractor, might make provisions for sampling and analysis prior to the correct disposal or reuse, based on the analysis results. You, as the material transporter or clean fill site receiver, might choose to not accept a load from the generator based on that assessment. An easy way to do that is just to create a yes-no checklist. Before I go to that slide, I'll just say a few more pieces. I guess this process forms part of your due diligence as a party that generates, owns, occupies, excavates, transports, accepts, and disposes potentially contaminated material. Please note that every site is unique. Every load of material is different. That's pretty obvious. If one or more of these assessment stages aren't applicable to your site or material, then you might not need to undertake that step. There's no need to spend all day, a whole hour, if the site doesn't warrant it. Similarly, not all information will be available for your site or material assessment. Therefore, in some cases, you can only include really what information you do know or can access. Okay, so the positive identification of hazardous waste, which might be commonly known as Category B or C prescribed industrial waste, or even 8, will often require the removal and disposal by a licensed vehicle to a licensed facility. Whilst disposing of this in a licensed landfill is obviously much more preferable than illegally dumping it or reusing the material in ways that aren't fit for purpose, then you can use the following resource to explore the options for the treatment of category B and C waste. Oops, let's go back. I will flick over to my next document here. Now, I would take you at this stage to the website, EPA website, where this is located, but for some reason it isn't working at present on my computer. Luckily, I've got some screen grabs that I can show you. The EPA Interaction Portal and Prescribed Industrial Waste Database is designed to assist contractors with managing the off-site transport, treatment and disposal of hazardous waste throughout Victoria. To locate a specific local waste transporter or acceptor or treater, visit epa.vic.gov.au and type in, as you can see here, Prescribed Industrial Waste Database in the search screen at the top right hand of the corner of the home page. Or if you're pretty handy with the EPA website, you can go straight to it following the general links. Click the mouse on Prescribed Industrial Waste Database Search when the search results appear. This will direct you to drop-down menus for the type of waste you wish to have removed. It will also ask you for a postcode location, which will assist the search engine with, finding and allocating the closest supplier to your site. So as you can see here, this is what it looks like. It's pretty simple, pretty easy to use. You click Waste Treaters Disposers, or Waste Transporters, sorry, or both together if you like, depending on what you need to do with the material. And you can select your waste categories and refine that waste type as well with drop-down menus. My apologies for not being able to demonstrate that again, but this is what it looks like, and it's fairly easy to follow. Enter your postcode ranges from and to, search, and this will result in a list of EPA licensed companies that accept and or transport hazardous industrial wastes in your selected region. Listed by, you'll get the company name, location, and the types of wastes that they handle. So just rounding things off, I hope this online meeting service seminar has provided you with an understanding of the purpose and requirements of a site or material assessment. As I mentioned earlier, exercising due diligence means that making all responsible and practical efforts to make sure that your site and material is known and fit for the intended purpose. It's my wish, I guess, that you're able to use this tutorial to set up your own site or material assessment checklist in your company management system. And if not, CCF has 2 resources that can assist you. I alluded to that earlier, and I've got some, visual reminders on the screen for you to have a look at or inquire about. CCF has developed and incorporated the EPA, it's an EPA VIC approved site assessment checklist. That is within the CCF integrated management system if you own the IMS. If you haven't got an update to that, please contact me and I can send a copy to you. And we've also created a carbon copy tick and flick booklet, which you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen, the fill material and site assessment checklist for the identification of potentially contaminated soil. It will contain the checklist and also some material to assist you with completing those checklists, some explanations of various parts, some web links to help as well, much in a similar way that I showed you this afternoon in this online seminar. So that pretty much wraps it up. I hope this has been informative. This seminar is being recorded and will be saved to the CCF website for future member access, as I mentioned earlier. If you would like to ask any questions about today's seminar, I encourage you to give me an email or give me a call, and I can hopefully clarify any questions you might have. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, and we'll see you at the next seminar.